more now on President Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. Norman Roule, the former National Intelligence Manager for Iran and now a senior advisor to the Counter-Extremism Project and United Against Nuclear Iran, joins me now from Washington. Good evening to you, Mr. Roule. President Trump has again today described it as a terrible deal that should never have been made. Is he right?
No, I would say the deal had certain advantages. However, the deal was perceived by its opponents to have multiple constraints, which were exploited by Iran to enable it to conduct an unprecedented expansion of its in the region and an expansion of its missile program. But the nuclear deal itself placed the Iran nuclear enterprise under unprecedented international oversight and froze it in place, and in some cases actually dismantled it. But I think the Iranians exploited the deal.
Yeah, Iran will come back and say we don't want to negotiate, Trump said today, but they'll negotiate or something will happen. What do you think he means by that?
I couldn't speak for the president, but what I can tell you is that as sanctions are rolled out again, Iran's economy will be under extreme pressure. This is a terrible time for such pressure for the Iranian government. They are facing political instability. They are facing the succession of the supreme leader over the horizon, and they require economic lifelines to Europe. I also believe that were Iran to reinstitute its nuclear military program, they would bring about terrible international sanctions and pressure on them. So I don't actually see the Iranians in the near future undertaking weaponization.
No, it appears that President Trump's strategy is to try and force the Iranians back to the negotiating table. Do you think that's likely to happen?
It won't happen in the near term, and the strategy might, and again, I'm not speaking for the president, but based on what I see, it might be to force the Europeans to take a stronger stance against Iran's ballistic missile program, its proliferation of advanced missile technology to its surrogates in Yemen and in Syria, and of course, its overall regime adventurism. Europe has had more than 2.5 years to address these problems, and prior to President Trump's October 13th speech, really didn't do much, and I think that was a great frustration for the administration. Iran will watch to see what Europe does in coming days. It will attempt to put a wedge between Europe and the United States, and were I in Tehran, I would attempt to threaten to pull out of the deal, claim hardliner pressure in an effort to extract additional concessions from the Europeans.
Yeah, we've heard from an Iranian government spokesman quoted on the Reuters news agency that the country has drawn up a plan proportional to America's withdrawal. What kind of response do you expect to see?
Well, Iran will almost certainly threaten to renew enrichment. They will roll out some advanced centrifuges and, given their past practices, embellish or lie about the status or success of this program. They will try to raise the bar against which future negotiations will take place. But Iran's options in some cases are limited. They require access to European insurance, financial institutions, and banks to move their oil revenues. So they want to play a careful game in which they don't push Europe so hard that Europe will impose sanctions on its own and deny Iran the benefits its stability requires.
Can the deal survive now, or do you think it's fatally whole beneath the waterline?
Well, it will be difficult for the deal to survive, but again, much depends upon what Europe can begin to do with the Iranians. There have been negotiations between the United States and Europe since late last summer, but the negotiations have not produced, according to my understanding, sufficient European pressures to actually compel Iran to change its behavior. Again, that is the frustration with Washington. At this point, Iran is not yet under sufficient international pressure that it would feel compelled to make any concessions. So in the near term, I don't see much hope of a renewed diplomatic process. But as sanctions are rolled out, as events play out, opportunities may exist. And the administration has committed to continuing its discussions with Europe. I conclude my comments on this question by saying it's imperative that the United States work with Europe. This is a team sport. Pressure against Iran only works when it's multilateral.
And yet we've got a rift, haven't we, between the United States and Europe, because the United States did not hear Europe's pleas to stay with the deal.
That is correct. The administration's response would be that the Europeans apparently were similarly deaf to its multiple requests that Europe do something, absolutely anything of consequence to push back on Iran's regional adventurism. And this adventurism is some very tangible threat to American lives and European lives in the region. The missiles that are being fired from Yemen are as much a threat to Europeans and Americans in Saudi Arabia as they are to Saudis. The administration has repeatedly asked for more European pressure against Iran, and it hasn't appeared.
Okay. Norman Roule, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this evening.
My pleasure.